Welcome to This Must Be the Place. I'm your host, Alo Galinsky. Each week, I'll uncover what's happening in Sonoma County, diving into the hidden gems and quirky corners. I'll be interviewing some of our local legends, as well as people you didn't know you need to know, all through the eyes of a craft beer enthusiast living in wine country. Join me as we explore one sip, one story, and one adventure at a time, and together we'll find out why this must be the place. What happens when you bring Renaissance science and the magic of Harry Potter to a historic California museum? For the team at the Petaluma Historical Library and Museum, it's a new way to showcase the area's rich history. Here to talk about how they're weaving magic into local artifacts and what it takes to organize such a unique exhibit and the events that follow, we have Executive Director Stacey Atchley joining us today. Welcome, Stacey.
Hi, Allo. Thanks so much for having me.
We're really excited to dive into this unique exhibit and the events you have surrounding it. I know it's coming up, and we can't wait to learn a little bit more. So, starting off, for those of us familiar with the museum, can you give us a little background on the mission of it and what purpose it serves in the community? And also, who are you in relation to the museum?
Sure. Always happy to talk about the museum. I'm the executive director of the museum. The Petaluma Museum, we like to think, is truly the historic heart of our community. And through a longstanding partnership between the city of Petaluma and the Petaluma Museum Association, we're a hub for learning, discovery, and community connection. Our mission is essentially to preserve and share the rich history of Petaluma and the surrounding area of Sonoma County while inspiring new ways of thinking about how the past shapes our future. So we're very much rooted in the past. We have more than 10,000 objects and artifacts that span Petaluma's early history all the way up to more modern times. But we also like to look ahead. So that means we want to know, what can we learn from history to build a stronger community together? And as part of that, we're always working to make history more inclusive and to uplift the stories of people who haven't historically been included in traditional narratives. So our museum today isn't just about preserving artifacts. We do that, but we're also really interested in how museums can help contribute to our community. How can we help shape a healthier, more connected Petaluma? And there's a lot of fascinating research out right now, and I'm really interested in this area. It shows that visiting museums can actually boost well-being, lower stress, helps build empathy, helps people feel like they belong. So when we're sharing stories about each other and listening to one another, we're building understanding and breaking down barriers, which is something that I think we can all agree that we need more of right now. So that's what we aim to do every day, make history meaningful, inspiring, and more relevant to everyone who walks through our doors. And I should mention that we are a nonprofit and we can't do any of this work without the support of our community, especially our members and our partners who help us keep the museum thriving as Petaluma's historic heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like such a great, as you said, kind of community and cultural hub for people to come enjoy. It's a museum I actually never knew existed before diving in and doing some research. So I'm gonna have to make my way down there. I do like a good museum every once in a while. I will say that sometimes I do find added stress of navigating the halls of some of those bigger museums. But when you think of a museum in relation to like going to a botanical garden, it's that same kind of, you're in a safe place, you're learning something, and you're taking in everything, all the sensory aspects around you. So I can definitely see how that might be a really welcoming space for people to kind of just come and take a load off and get lost in something for an afternoon.
Yeah, and we're kind of like a jewel box museum. We're small, sort of bite size compared to a lot of the other, wonderful but large museums that we're lucky enough to have in the Bay Area. So, we're designed for a quick drop in compared to, spending all day, which you are more than welcome to do, of course. But it's a great way to pop in and learn something new, see some beautiful architecture and beautiful historic objects, not an overwhelming experience.
Well, speaking of that architecture you just touched on, for those of us like myself who haven't visited before, I hear there's a pretty rich history of the building. It's quite significant. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Absolutely. So we like to think of the museum building itself being our largest artifact because it really is a jewel. So we're located in Petaluma's original Carnegie Library, which was completed in 1906.
Wow.
And it was designed by local architect Brainerd Jones, who went on to become Petaluma's most preeminent architect. And our building was his first major commission. It's also Petaluma's first historic landmark. It's in a turn of the century Beaux-Arts architecture style. And we have the largest stained glass dome of its kind in Northern California. And it takes everyone's breath away when they walk in. Even after so many years of going in myself, I'm still just stunned by its beauty. So it's worth a visit just to see the stained glass dome. But as
Very
I mentioned,
cool.
it's Petaluma's first historic landmark, and it's always been a place of learning and inspiration. And we maintain that even as a museum. You know, we outgrew the library as a community in the 1970s, and a new library was created across town. And we're fortunate that at that time there was a lot of interest in historic preservation, in part spurred on by the bicentennial of the US in 1976. And there had been a rush to modernize a lot of cities in the post war era of the 50s and 60s. And so some of Petaluma's historic buildings were lost. So we're lucky that in the 70s, a group of visionary leaders stepped up and rallied to save the historic library building and transform it into a museum. So we're still a place of learning and community, just like we've always been, but we're now a museum. So when the the property was sold to the city of Petaluma for the construction of the library, it was sold by a woman named Addie Atwater, and she was, really unusual for her time. She was an outspoken, very civic-minded woman who got things done. And when she sold the land to the city, she specified that there would always be a library on that site, or else the property would revert to her heirs.
Oh, wow.
So, more than 120 years later, we still maintain a library on the property. We have a research library in the museum that's open to the public for conducting research on their historic homes or genealogy. We get a lot of scholars and journalists coming in as well to research Petaluma history. So it's a really fun service that we provide, and helps stay true to Addie's original wishes for the site.
That's really cool. And you're hosting some really cool exhibits, it sounds like, including this new one coming up that we're going to talk about at large, Renaissance Science, Magic, and Medicine in Harry Potter's World. Sounds like
Yes.
a really fantastic new experience for people to come in and enjoy. What makes Petaluma and your museum especially a great fit to host something like this?
Yeah. Well, I know that exhibition title is a mouthful, but it's a really fun exhibit, and we've had such a great time working on it and bringing it to Petaluma. So it explores how real Renaissance science and things like alchemy and herbal medicine and astronomy and early experimentation inspired the magical world of Harry Potter. So we've paired this national traveling exhibit, which was created by the National Library of Medicine, with objects and stories from Petaluma's own history. So weaving those together, we're creating this show about how curiosity and wonder have always been part of the human experience, whether it's in 15th century Europe during the Renaissance or 20th century Petaluma. So it's a great fit for our museum because it celebrates curiosity and learning and innovation, which are values that are at the heart of both the Renaissance and our community's story. Petaluma has this wonderful history of filled with makers and innovators and people who are at the cutting edge and developing new ideas, whether it's the poultry industry or technology. We've got that great history that parallels a lot of these thinkers from the Renaissance era. So this exhibit invites visitors to see how those Renaissance era roots of modern science once lived side by side with ideas of magic, and how that same spirit of exploration still drives us today and has driven Petaluma too. So it's that bridge between magic and science and history that is still grounded in fact, but really echoes in Petaluma's story that got us excited to bring this exhibit to town.
That's cool. And it sounds like you're making it your own as well. You're taking something that's a finite exhibit and you're bringing your own local flair, which I think is one of those great things about Sonoma County is how unique and innovative people are here. They have ideas and they want to, bring local agriculture, local history, and local people into exhibits and events that are hosted around the county.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to look at our local history, but also think about what's our place in the broader history of the world and in society. And so we start from that local lens, but look outwards. And there's so many connections that we can make when we do that, not just to focus inward, but to think about how we're part of the larger community too.
Now, in terms of the objects from Petaluma's past and history that may be housed in your museum, can you give us a concrete example or examples of how maybe you drew some lines from local historical items, maybe like a medical instrument or botanical journal, to a concept within the wizarding world? How are you getting creative with this?
Yes, and this was a really fun part of this project because
I
when we
bet.
started looking through our own collections, we realized that we had so many objects that could easily belong in Hogwarts, and so it was a lot of fun to explore this. And I have one particular favorite object that might sound a little unusual to us in this day and age, but um,
To us
this
muggles?
is a it's actually a friendship hair book from 1843. And this is a handmade album which was created by a young girl who collected braided locks of hair from her friends. So to our modern sensibilities, maybe a little odd, but back then it really connected this idea of friendship being something powerful and tangible and emotional, which as I started thinking about it more, really connected wonderfully to some of the themes in Harry Potter. And so we've paired this book with the story of Harry and Ron and Hermione making the polyjuice potion. And if you're a fan of the Harry Potter stories, you
Oh,
probably
yes.
remember that part
I
where
grew
they
up with
use
Harry
it.
Potter.
Yes, so you'll remember that they use a strand of hair to create a transformation potion and change identity. So it's interesting to look at this object from history and something seemingly as significant as hair, but it can still carry deep emotional and in the case of Harry Potter, magical meaning. And I think it's great to highlight that idea that friendship and belonging are their own kind of magic, and that people have always sought ways to preserve those connections. And in this day of social media, it's really nice to look back at historic objects like these and see the more tangible ways that people stayed connected with each other and
Yeah,
honored their
no, that makes a lot
friendships.
of sense.
Yeah.
Are there any other local historical items or things you want to touch on before we chat about other things with the exhibit?
Yes. So another fun one that we have is historic herbarium journals. And these are journals that the particular ones that we have high school students used to try to understand the world around them. And as we dug into that, these collections of flowers and plants that were pressed in the pages of books, I learned that this was actually something that was started during the Renaissance by an Italian botany professor. Of course, people have always worked to preserve plant material, probably since the beginning of human history, but this practice of pressing them in books was something that actually happened during the Renaissance, which was a great tie into this exhibit. And our particular examples from the early 1900s, one is from 1912. It was created by a young female high school student. That to me was interesting because it speaks to this democratization of science, and science had been the province of men for centuries, and women were largely excluded from formal learning. So it's great to see this example of a woman's scientific work, her engaging with the natural world and using this book, which is by both scientific and creative way to try to understand the world around it as and the magic of nature and the natural world.
Very cool. Now, was there a big selection process? Like, I'd love to have a little bit of insight. How did the museum staff, I'm sure you were heavily involved, how did they decide which of Petaluma's historical objects would like fit right in at Hogwarts? Was there a certain discovery that everybody really like fell in love with and this was like, oh, this is a must-have?
Yes. So we looked at our collections and we basically asked ourselves if this existed in Harry Potter's world, what would it do? What purpose would it serve? And so through that lens, we started seeing our collections in a new light. So for instance, we have a large collection of early Petaluma medical supplies from apothecary bottles and jars and pharmaceutical tools, and even things like milk bottles or Coca-Cola bottles or soda water, mineral water, thinking about these objects and realizing that, this is potion making. This really isn't all that different from Harry Potter. We think of this as science now, but that it's still that innovation and putting ingredients together and creating something that does something right, and that is at its heart potion making. So it was really fun to start looking at some of the objects like that through this Harry Potter perspective, and seeing that there still is magic in modern science and in history. We just have to look at it a little bit differently.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And that's fun. It's fun to kind of warp your minds in a fun way to be able to say, okay, how does this fit? And what are the stories we're trying to tell here?
Exactly.
But I can only imagine there might be some challenges with trying to tie this exhibit together. And I'm curious, have you foreseen or do you foresee any challenges in hosting this exhibition emerges like a globally recognized pop culture franchise and, adored and beloved figures and characters with local history. And, I'm sure there comes some challenges with balancing, serving the expectations of Harry Potter fans, along with the museum's mission to showcase Petaluma's heritage.
Right. And so we want to differentiate that this is not an exhibit per se about Harry Potter.
Right.
It's using the Harry Potter world as a door to science and history. And while Harry Potter is certainly, part of this exhibit, and because these ideas have manifested in the stories of Harry Potter, this is not a theme park type of exhibit. This is still at its core an exhibit that's grounded in learning and in fact, but it's been really fun to take a fresh look at history and make history fun and alive, and look at the magic of history and how we can make it relevant and enjoyable by using this world of Harry Potter that everyone loves and is familiar with and comfortable with. It's a great gateway to learning about some of the historical concepts that are in the stories.
And I can imagine also getting, different audiences into the museum who might be Harry Potter fanatics who want to see how those things tie into a world that they know and love and may have never been to visit the Petaluma Historical Museum before.
Right. It's a great way to reach new audiences and to get people in the door and show them that there are fun and interesting things happening here. History doesn't have to be dry and static. It can be fun and interesting and relevant to modern life too.
And I'm sure coming up with an exhibition like this is challenging in its own ways to be able to tell a cohesive story. Like, is the experience meant to be a scavenger hunt, a guided narrative, more immersive? Like, how is the exhibition designed to tell that story that you're looking to tell?
So the exhibit's organized into sections. So there's a section on potions, monsters, herbology, magical creatures, and immortality. And each one of those is paired with Renaissance concepts and local Petaluma history. So we'll have text panels and objects that explore the Petaluma connection for each of these areas. And visitors can follow a loose path to explore each of those sections, but there's also room to wander around, linger, and choose your own path to experience the exhibit. We wanted the space to feel immersive without being over the top. So we are trying to create some of that magical ambiance, but it's mainly about creating a sense of curiosity, that feeling like when you walk into an old library like ours, or you open a new mystery book, you feel that spark of curiosity and intrigue. So we wanted to create that same feeling between the past and present, and engage people with that sort of feeling through this exhibit. And so I think even diehard Harry Potter fans will be a fan of this exhibit just as much as lovers of local history. The goal is to inspire people by this power of creativity and curiosity, and hopefully we've achieved that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it also seems that along with the exhibition, you're having some really cool events planned around to launch it. Tell our listeners what you have planned for this magical evening in the world of Harry Potter.
We're so excited for this one, Elo. So we have an event called Mystery at the Museum, a timeless gathering. And it's both a celebration of the exhibit and a fundraiser to support the museum's educational programs. It's happening on Saturday, November 8th from 4 to 7, and you can get tickets. There's a link on our website, or you can go directly to our Eventbrite page. It's going to be a fun night of magic and mystery. Guests will step into the museum's garden court and participate in some Harry Potter inspired activities led by local artisans. So things like potion making and tea blending, tarot reading, and lots of other things that are in the works. Then they'll step inside the museum for this very fun program that we've collaborated with a group called Live History to present. And they're this creative group who creates history-based events in museums all over the country. So for us, they've created an immersive mystery experience based on an actual character from Petaluma's past, someone who may have a connection to one of the objects on the exhibit. I'll just drop a hint there.
You don't want to
And
give it
so,
away, do you? You want people to come
no,
experience it for themselves.
the guests will have to work together to solve puzzles and complete tasks throughout the museum to unravel the story. So it's a little bit of an escape room style program, and it's a really fun way to bring that local history to life. And I'm so excited that Table Culture Provisions, who's one of Petaluma's top restaurants, will be providing the food for us. And Griffo Distillery's got some very fun Harry Potter themed cocktails in the works for us. We're even going to have live Renaissance dance lessons and hopefully some magical creatures making a brief appearance too. So it's going to be a really fun way to support the museum, but also experience Petaluma's history and the magic of Harry Potter at the same time.
That sounds, as you said, very magical, very immersive. I'm sure Buckbeak's not going to be making an appearance there, but maybe Hedwig the Owl will be there. I can only imagine, some of these magical creatures that you might find or might find yourself transformed into if you don't make the potion correctly, as it may
Yes.
be.
And earlier that day for the little ones, we've got a magic workshop planned. So from 11 to 12, you can drop in the museum and learn some historic magic tricks and learn about the history of magic. And Clover Sonoma is one of our partners. They're going to be there with hot chocolate and eggnog. So it's a great way to kick off the holiday season and have a little fun in the process.
Well, I was always obsessed with magic as a little kid, so I may have to come and scope it out from a big kid perspective there because I was always trying to do my own magic tricks and sleight of hand when I was younger.
Well, kids of all ages are welcome. So, yes, most definitely stop by.
Well, I can't wait to come over and attend that event on the evening of the 8th. It sounds like it's a really great kickoff to the exhibit. And I'm curious, as you've gone through the planning of all of this, you've probably learned some lessons from this event planning and the exhibit that maybe you might apply to future, more non-traditional exhibits at the museum. Are there any things that you've learned or picked up along the way that might inspire or encourage you to do more things like this, whether it's bringing in another traveling exhibition or maybe launching something unique of your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I think our main takeaway from this exhibit is it's the reminder about how much people love experiencing history. So when visitors can immerse themselves in a story or solve mysteries or create something, they remember it, right? So partnering with groups like Live History helps us bring that new energy and ideas to make history come alive in unexpected ways. And also that value of storytelling, the balance between scholarship and imagination. We can present the most rigorous historical research, but when we frame it in story and emotion, it becomes something that people connect to on a personal level. And I think that's the big strength of this particular exhibit and the kind of museum experience we want to keep building on. People don't just observe history, but feel part of it.
Yeah, the show of the show and tell is very important. And the tell, I guess the
Mhm.
showing in a larger scale, you can see things in an exhibit, but then the stories around the telling and the showing them in a larger scale, like doing this evening, really help bring things to life.
Right. And I think grounding traveling exhibits like these in local context is so important to achieving that goal too. It helps make history feel more relevant if we can see how our own community and our own lives and the places we see every day can be connected to the larger world. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of value in that too.
So after the final spell is cast, after this exhibit is over and done with, whether it's right before the holidays or in the new year, are there other upcoming events or exhibits that folks should be keeping an eye out for?
Yes, we're going to keep the fun going right through the end of the year. We've got another really fun exhibit coming up in December and January called Toys Through Time from Machine Age to Space Age. And this exhibit juxtaposes two really interesting private collections, one of antique mechanical toys and the other one of vintage Star Wars toys. So together, they create this incredible story, these two sort of bookends about how toys reflect our cultural values and technological process and progress and our collective imagination. So they're not just playthings, but we can learn a lot about history by looking at toys. So,
Sure.
for instance, these mechanical toys of the early 20th century, powered by clockwork and springs and gears, they gave way to plastic toys of the space age with lights and sound. And it reflects that shift of society moving from the Industrial Revolution into the modern technological era. So it's really interesting to see how these toys reflect our culture and our society and how even help advance robotics and AI and play is such an important part of development in all aspects. So it'll be really interesting to look at these toys through that lens. And of course, everybody loves Star Wars, so that's a bonus too.
Star Wars, like Harry Potter, both very timeless. They'll live on
Exactly.
for generations, and that's also you'll bring different generations together. The folks who've seen Star Wars as they were growing up to the new generation of Star Wars lovers. It's a way to get everybody coming out and involved and talking
Right, and learning too.
and
And
learning.
that's really what we want to achieve is finding approachable ways to get people excited about history and learning. And I think toys are a great example of that. We might dismiss them as just playthings for kids, but there's really a lot that we can learn about history through them. And so this will be a fun way to do that.
Absolutely. So I have a fun final question for you as we wrap up here. Now, what Hogwarts house do you belong in, and why do you think that you belong there?
Oh, wow. Well, I suppose I've always felt a pull towards Ravenclaw because I love curiosity and learning, asking questions and exploring new ideas and looking for creative ways to explore history. But there's probably also a little bit of Hufflepuff in me too, that community spirit and kindness that makes the work we do at the museum rewarding. So I guess is Ravenpuff a thing? Can I create
Ravenpuff
that?
can definitely be a thing. We're making it a thing right now if it isn't
All
already.
right.
Because
Sounds
Huffleclaw doesn't
good.
have quite the same ring to it.
No, it doesn't. No.
I'm definitely a big Hufflepuff myself. And for all our listeners out there, why don't you let us know? We have a comment section in our podcast. Chime in and let us know what house you belong in and why you think you belong there. And if you really want to get a good sense of why you belong in Hogwarts and why you belong in Petaluma or Sonoma County history, head on out to this exhibit. Make a plan to go out to the event on the night of the 8th and soak in some really fun exhibitions, some fun games, maybe a cocktail or two and just enjoy yourself. This sounds like such a unique, fun experience, and I can't wait to find out for myself all about it. And thank you so much, Stacey, for appearing on the podcast. We really appreciate this.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always fun to share what's happening at the museum.
There are so many fun questions I have about curation and procurement of all these toys and all these artifacts. That might have to be a whole nother podcast at some point because I could ask many questions about that. But for now, I'll sign off saying to everybody, have a great week. And Stacey, I will catch you soon.
Thanks, Alo.
Take care.
The interviews are done, which means I think it's time to crack one open. Interviews make me thirsty, and I want you thirsting for knowledge about some great beer, both local and not so local. Each week, I'll introduce you to a beer I find discussion worthy and explain the nuances of what makes it fantastic in my eyes and why you should give it a try. And just to keep it on point, I'll even try to make sure the beer reflects the vibe or theme of the episode. In light of the recent conversation with the executive director of the Petaluma Historical Library and Museum, it made me thirsty for a piece of Petaluma lore myself. Lagunitas Brewing has been around since 1993,
only 5 years less than me, and its original recipes and unique strong takes on beer had customers flocking to their products for years. A beer that was created as a happy accident back in 1997 quickly became a huge fan favorite. You beer lovers listening out there might know what I'm talking about: brown sugar. This strong ale came about as a result of a batch of Lagunitas Old Gnarly wine going wrong, and founder Tony McGee was able to salvage it by instructing his brewers to get all the brown sugar you can buy, which turned out to be 350 pounds, and having them add it to the wort or unfermented beer. The result? A strong, malty, caramel-sweet ale that was released as a winter seasonal and having people ask, how could you taste so good? Much to fans' distaste, the beer was discontinued in the last decade. However, this beer has a sweet comeback story and was just re-released for the first time in years. I'm sitting here sipping on this strong ale, and it's as good as I remember it. It's got a nice malty body, a boozy finish, and sweetness, though not overpowering. I can assure you that this beer will be around for a good time, not a long time, and you should get out to the Lagunitas Taproom in Petaluma and support your local brewery, or snag it on your favorite local store shelves while you can. A huge thanks to Stacey Atchley for chatting with me on this week's episode, and until next week, cheers from your host.
This Must Be the Place is produced by our friends at Pod Locally, an audio platform helping local voices connect to their communities. Don't forget to like, subscribe, or comment on all your favorite podcast apps, and visit the show notes for more information, links, and resources. Look out for our next drop on Sunday. Until then, I'm your host, Alo Galinsky, saying have a great week.